And now I'd like to introduce Dee. Dee is a wonderful friend and a delight that we've gotten to know over these last years. Dee is a social development entrepreneur, having spent the past 20 years in the South African development and NGO sector. And since 2004, she served as the executive director of Connect Network, a collaborative network of South African NGOs, churches, and specialists who work with women and children at risk. Dee Moskoff is a nurse, a midwife, and a qualified pediatric primary healthcare practitioner. She holds a BA honors degree in development studies and is currently a master's candidate at the Maxwell School for Public Administration and Policy Analysis at Syracuse University in the United States. Dee is passionate about challenging social systems that put children at risk. Her vision is to see small to medium-sized Christian value-based organizations and churches being credible contributors to advocacy and social development. And Dee and her husband, Ivan, have a son and 3 daughters and live in Cape Town, South Africa. So it's our joy, Dee, to have you with us, and we'd invite you now to begin sharing your thoughts with us.
Greetings from the mother city, which is known, other name for it is Cape Town, South Africa, and a warm welcome to each one of you to come and visit. My husband is probably in on this webinar, is probably saying, Dee, who are you inviting now? But if you're in South Africa, please do come and pass by a visit here. It's good to be here. I'm excited to share this webinar on the relational side of networking. Our network here in South Africa, we call it Connect Network. It was formed in 2004. And I've learned over the years the value and the importance of balancing each relationship above any program, project, network activity, agenda. And the network would not be a network without the glue of relationships. I think most of us who are networkers here would know that. Added to this, there's as strong as relationships may seem among our affiliates or our members, they're equally as fragile. And so as a network coordinator, it's all important to undergird each interaction within the context of trust, respect, and accountability. And these are the 3 elements that I would like to share with you today. So the topic that we've agreed on is relationship-based kingdom partnership agreements that achieve results while protecting relationships of trust. You know, all of us in the room would say, why do we partner? Why would we want to partner? And I guess we're all sitting as networkers or mission drivers or whatever because we're probably inherently problem solvers. And if I think of who could be in the room with us, the virtual room, we're probably looking at mobilizing people, we're doing mission, children, looking at children at risk. We want to evangelize, we want to share resources, we're looking at development, we want to solve the massive issues of poverty, of war, of hunger, and we actually, I think all of us would say we want to see the kingdom of God come on earth while in our lifetime. Typically, people would come together about addressing these problems, and our approach to address the problem will define which people we want to develop relationships with and how will we manage these relationships. It will also determine our positioning in the problem-solving arena. And just a quote from Thomas Edison, he says, if I could solve all the problems myself, I would. And he was asked this, why when he was asked why he had a team of 21 assistants. So again, he said, if I could solve all the problems myself, I would. Addressing a problem, our approach to address the problem will define which people we want to develop partnership with. And how will we manage those relationships of those people, also determine how we want to position ourselves. So we'll cover some of these things as we go through the presentation. Our key challenge is always, of course, remaining in relationship throughout a life cycle of partnerships. So I'll be touching a little bit on the balance of these relationships. I think if we're human, each one of us can say we haven't always cracked it, and we've learned a lot by our mistakes and our successes. And over the 20 years of my own personal experience of learning how to remain in relationship throughout the various partnerships has been just remaining in relationship has been one of the key elements of the success for partnerships that have been able to network to achieve desired results. And also how not being attentive to certain relational elements have actually caused unfortunate outcomes and project failures. And then I'll share one or two examples with you later. But I've got a sense that many of us can identify with the chap on the tightrope as we navigate through our relationships. Our focus here in this presentation is on relationships. And so what I will do is share some key relational threads that I've learned along the way and will hopefully assist you in leading your network, achieving your mission. I will also put some emphasis on mission inversion, and in other words, doing mission with instead of doing mission for the people that we exist to serve and solve the problems for. So we're going to go through, just to introduce the format, is we're going to go through the 3 stages of network development. That those of you who are part of Synergy Commons, I believe this is common language, which is exploration, formation, and operation. And at each stage, we're going to take one key activity and one relational focus, and then we're going to emphasize one point. I focused on some of the key activities and a complementary relational focus for each. And then I've called out a particular emphasis of what is pertinent to that stage of partnership development. So watch out for the 3 relational foci, which is building trust. You'll see it in the 3rd column, mutual respect and accountability. So throughout the entire process of developing partnerships, these 3 elements are absolutely crucial from our own experience. So looking at exploration, our key activity here is initiating an idea. It's where does this idea come from? Who hatches it? This could be, those who are innovators or visionaries. You might be lying in bed at night and dreaming of your ideas to solve the problem, whereas others are more collaborative or process-driven, or you might hatch your idea within the context of a brainstorming meeting. So just the whole initiation of an idea is what are the relational elements and the relational focus around this initiation of an idea. So, if you think about it, every network, every effort, every company, every organization, every church, local church, whatever, someone initiated the idea. There was a pioneer. So what are the relational elements around that? And then I'd like to emphasize a key point here on peacemaking versus peacekeeping. And again, learning from our own trials and mistakes. So here we have on the left, you have the new idea. So it's either been hatched by an individual, or it's been hatched within the context of a collaboration, or just a brainstorming session on how to solve problem X, for instance. So the new idea, the person who has the idea, it's you internalize it. It's a little bit of perhaps confusion or chaos, or it's just the idea, and you're trying to make all these links in your mind to say, but who will do it, what, where, when, how much is it going to cost, how much time, who will I need on my team, how are we going to approach this thing? And this is often your entrepreneur the visionary would come up with this. But again, it could actually be in a collaborative setting. Then we say, so what do we do with this idea? We share it with someone in the network. We want colleagues, we want friends to validate it, and we get our validation. So 1 or 2 people, it sticks with them, and they say, yeah, absolutely, let's go ahead, and yay, we've got validation. So you're feeling a little bit more confident at this point about your idea, because others actually quite like it. And then from validation, it will turn to probably a viable concept. And in this part of the idea hatching, I like to call it, you're kind of thinking, or maybe the group of you, the few you've shared it in, you're deciding who should be in on it, and you start approaching them. So you're already starting to think of your linkages there. And then with who you get traction, the idea gets added to, people want to work together on it, and now you've got to get your proposals written, etc., etc. And at this level, you'll see at the bottom here, I've put the relational element here is trust. And why do we say that? It's because when I hatch a new idea, I'm always aware of who's in the room, and do I actually feel safe enough to share this idea with anyone? Because every idea, and those of you who have been in the vision space, carries with it a certain amount of risk and responsibility. So you're putting yourself out there, you could be knocked down, people could say, no, really it's not going to work. So the relational elements here is the sense of connectedness. We're looking for friendship, for confidentiality. Some people are really thinking about their intellectual property. So it's my idea, don't share it or whatever. So for those who do feel like that, you've got to have a sense of confidentiality, and are we trustworthy in that? The sense of respect, you're looking to be respected and not knocked down. Do you want to feel safe and you want to be listened to? So this is just these are all elements of building trust. And if you have to invert this, if you're the person, for instance, if I'm the person with the idea, these are the elements I would want to feel safe and feel I'm in a trusted space. But again, if I'm the listener, if someone's come to me and said, I've got a new idea, am I providing that trustworthiness, the confidentiality, the respect, the safe environment? Am I listening? So we could have a whole lesson and a whole lecture and a whole sermon just on the issue of trust. And I think if you're human, been in a situation where trust has been broken, and how this speaks into the fragility of our relationships as well. Going back to the picture of the chap on the tightrope, you can build trust, but it can take one thing to break trust. And if you even had to just stop for a few seconds and reflect on that, you can imagine a moment where that has happened for you, either in your personal and your work life. So following on from that, the whole trust thing, I want to emphasize the whole idea of peacemaking versus peacekeeping. And I've kind of put them in, almost imagine a sword fight at this point. And there's that tension space of, am I peacemaking or am I peacekeeping? But what is actually the difference? And we brainstormed a few ideas around here, and I'm sure you can imagine as well. In peacemaking, there's a sense of, you actually don't mind a bit of conflict. So if people really get upset and they voice their opinion, you can deal with it. Because at the end of the process, you want everybody to feel heard. Whereas in peacekeeping, and I think, I'm certainly been guilty of this many times, where I just want to shut up for the sake of peace. It's like, there's so much going on in the room, and I literally shut out for the sake of peace. But in the long run, it actually causes more issues that you have to deal with later. So when we did the comparison of the two, for peacemaking, we'd say we listen for conflicts and differences. So you tuned in. It's tuning in. I mean, as a mom of 4 children that went through adolescence all at once, this happened regularly across our dinner table. So you're tuning in and listening for conflicts and differences. Whereas if I was peacekeeping, I'd be covering up those differences. Don't worry, so-and-so doesn't mean it that way. Or you're continually trying to get that kind of atmosphere of peace, but you know there's something brewing up underneath. Then there's, under peacemaking, we talk about transparency. It's, am I prepared to be vulnerable? Am I prepared to put myself out there? Can you check on anything in my life and I'm not hiding anything, or within the context of the meeting or the project? Whereas in peacekeeping, there's a sense of not speaking up. Well, I don't think I should share this because it's not relevant to this meeting. Whereas it could actually be, to say, for instance, and here's an example, in a peacekeeping situation, when it comes to something like someone in your room might be sitting on a pot of funding or might be in huge debt. The organization, the church, the ministry might be in huge debt, but they're wanting to partner on this because they see a hopeful opportunity. But they're not speaking up about it and they're not putting it on the table. Then if I look at healthy conflict, again, it's that, are we okay with a little bit of storm in the room? Now, for those of you who have people in your life that are more continental, so culturally they might be quite comfortable with conflict, and for them it doesn't even seem like conflict. So they're quite culturally used to sharing how they feel. In our own office at Connect Network, we have a mix of different cultures in the room and different age groups. So we're quite a diverse team on our board and on our coordination team. And there's times I really appreciate the honesty of a certain cultural group where they'll come and they'll say, Dee, you know what? We didn't like the way you did that, or we didn't like the way you approached that in the meeting. And I'm so grateful for that, because then you can actually address it and you can move past it. But on the other hand, my positioning would be that I shouldn't get offended easily. So these are the relational things that we internalize that often we don't show, people around us. Whereas on the other hand, I could avoid that. My staff could say to me, you know what, Dee's in a really bad mood today. She's got a webinar tonight. It's the first time she's doing it, and just don't get in her way. So they all kind of avoid me. No, Dee, we understand, or I say I understand to one of my staff, I understand things are difficult in your life right now, and you're behaving in a certain way, or you're reacting. So conflict is packaged in so many arenas, in so many different ways. And I think at this level of work, we really need to be comfortable with conflict. Respecting each other, again, that kind of feeds into the conflict thing, but it speaks into people feeling safe with each other. So, for instance, someone's feeling particularly strong about something, and perhaps they speak louder than others in a meeting, and the others say, oh, they're really disrespectful or whatever. So, no, even those who are a little bit more pushy in the meeting, is listen to them, respect them, and likewise respect the quieter ones in the room, or the more kind of even-tempered approach, if you like. The other, and then opposite to that, in peacekeeping, we could dismiss each other. Well, you just spoke too loud, therefore I'm not even going to consider what you're saying. So easily dismissing each other. Mutual agreement versus given or give up is, you want to really push through these relational things so that you can come to mutual agreement. And so that you can come to grace, and sometimes you're going to need to come to forgiveness as well, because perhaps in this process, and probably in the storming process, there's been offense that's been taken. And at this point, you either, or we either, you know, always coming back, it's either we have grace and forgive, or do we have unresolved conflict, mistrust, and then we just leave. And if you really intent on peacemaking, the reward will be that your partnership continues in a healthy way. However, on the other hand, if you stick with the peacekeeping and we're covering up our differences, we're not speaking up, we're avoiding conflict, we're dismissing each other, in our experience, partnership either ends or loses its momentum because it's too hard to actually push through. And it actually affects the outcome of the partnership, the plan, the real reason why we came together in the first place. We had an incident where a big evangelical alliance wanted to partner with us on creating HIV-friendly churches. And they said, we've got the funding, we've got the people, but we need your connections. So with all due respect, we were never previously in relationship with this alliance. And we had no reason to be, but they wanted what the network had. And I kind of let it ride for a while because I thought, this is a really big opportunity for the network. Maybe we should push through. But meeting after meeting after meeting, it was quite evident that there was a strong driver in the room, and the driver had an agenda. And it was never really about building the network. And I took the peacekeeping option to a point where I actually thought, no, as a network leader here, I actually need to draw a line in the sand and say, sorry, but you know, there's just no chemistry between what you're doing and what we are doing. So it was kind of a mix of peacemaking, peacekeeping, but ultimately the partnership did end and we did lose momentum. So often a strong agenda or leader pushes through, especially with the partnerships, a strong central leader. So if the whole partnership is around a centralized, and one thing to note as well is if the central leader is the ideas person who's also happened to perhaps find resources and funding. So just a caution here to be really careful, and especially with donor-led approaches, which I will bring up after the poll in a minute. Which brings us to the poll. So this is where you give an opportunity to contribute to the conversation. And here in the poll, our question to you is, you're a participant in a partnership conversation. You sense an unspoken disagreement that could lead to, that could lead to a peacekeeping scenario. What do you think is the most important first step that you can take to shift the conversation towards a peacemaking scenario? So I'm going to put that slide back up. There we go. And then if you guys, I think the instruction here is you need to tick the boxes. So you need to tick one that you think is the most important first step. And I'll read through them to help you along. Alert the facilitator at the tea break. Okay. Discuss your concerns with other group members at tea time. Avoid the topic and move on. Surface your concern by asking a clarifying question, or decide you are not a good fit and you leave the group. So at this point, you need to be ticking those boxes. So you must be thinking about it now. So you're sitting in a room and it's part of your network or your team, and you can see that you really want to get somewhere, but the direction of this meeting is moving towards a peacemaking scenario, peacekeeping. In other words, there's a lot of compromise going on. How are you going to move to a peacemaking as a room participant? The poll has disappeared. Okay, good. So we have 83% of you say you would surface your concern by asking a clarifying question. And the second two, in tandem, alert the facilitator at tea break and avoid the topic and move on. Okay. So there are things you can do rather than relying only on the facilitator to steer it. It's about being actively engaged in peacemaking contribution. So what I'm hoping for here is, if we go into meetings with that little trigger in our mind, you know, as you become a network specialist, is I always say, if you're a general practitioner as a doctor, you're looking at the general well-being of a patient. But if you're a neurosurgeon, you're looking for other things. You're looking at the eyes and the pupils. So as network specialists, is when you go into a room, are you looking for that's one of the little diagnostic things you're looking for in a room. And you want to be proactive. So alert to facilitate the tea break is probably more for those who prefer, who are maybe a little bit nervous of conflict, and it's a safer option. So it is a good option in that case, if you know yourself. Avoid the topic and move on. Sometimes you do want to do that and you just want to run on or run away, or it's perhaps in the hope that things are going to get better, that actually, if I ignore it long enough, it might get better, and it might just do that. Then most of you say surface your concern by asking a clarifying question. Very good. That's being proactive within the meeting. And I think, again, the way we position ourselves when we're asking the question is to do it in a non-threatening way. So you want to do it in an open-ended way. I think using good tone of voice, good open-ended questioning. Yeah, so good. So you decide you're not a good fit and leave the group. That's also okay. Sometimes you get to a point where you think, well, you know what, these guys are up the tree somewhere and I'm not in the same tree as them, and you leave the group. So good. Thank you. Let's move on then to our next stage, which is formation. And in this stage, we're going to look at our key activity we're going to look at. So last stage we did was initiating an idea. And in this one, we're going to look at our approach and our position in this. So imagine now the idea has been hatched and you've now got a great idea to take Bibles into China. And for instance, now you've got to think of what is our approach and how are we going to position ourselves, all right? And then we're going to look at the relational focus, which is on mutual respect. And we're going to emphasize a scenario of joint decision-making. So, okay, remember, I'm working in Cape Town, South Africa, and we deal a lot with international donors. So this is coming out of experience of being a recipient and a participant partner in this scenario. So now we have this idea and it's hatched and we're starting to get excited about it because we're movers and shakers and we're problem solvers. And we've really got to consider at this point, how are we going to approach this? Who's our, if you like, beneficiary group? Do we call them a beneficiary group, or do we call those who will be recipients of our good works or our efforts or our problem solving? Who are they? Are they our friends, or are they people we just want to help to reduce something because we see a need that needs to be fixed? And yeah, this is where too often, and even in South Africa, we have great disparities between the rich and the poor, the haves, the have-not. We've got a history of apartheid. There's a lot of dynamic going on here in South Africa. And from a more well-resourced community, we could often make decisions and fund projects for others because we believe they need our help. And we very easily rally up resources to fix things, but have we actually listened to them? And how do we come to mutual respect and understanding of each other's position? I'm going to give you an example here, and it'll probably put a small smile on your face. We have a small, well, it's a small shack, which is a tin metal structure, if you like. It's a church building. It's about 15 minutes drive from where our office is and where I live. And there's a pastor there who crams that place on a Sunday morning. It's totally beyond health and structural, what would be safe. And so someone came over and said, from a well-resourced area, went to see the church and said, where do your people go to the bathroom during the service? Because you've packed this little shack and there's no ablutions for them. And they said, no, they just go to the neighbors or they're going to the field. It depends, what the ablution's all about, if you like. And he said, well, how about this? Looking from a sanitation perspective, I can help you put some portable, what do you call them? We call them toilets here, washrooms, bathrooms, whatever you call them. So we could put portable ones here, but I'll give you 6 weeks. And if your congregation can actually dig the hole for the piping to go underneath. And so the toilets, we call them toilets, they get delivered. They've got a structure and they've got little wash hand basins, and 6 weeks come and go and no trenches built. Now, the people who provided the toilets also provided funding. So it was the equivalent of about $5,000, for instance. That would have been more than enough to fix up the building, put some fans in, get the toilets going and whatever. Now what happens? There's a death in the church. So the $5,000 is now in the church's account, in the bank account. Now there's a death in the church. And culturally here, we have different tribes, 11 different tribes in South Africa. And funerals are very respected, ceremony in the particular tribe that lives here in the Western Cape. And they all travel a day's drive to their homeland, and they would kill a few calves and cows and have a big feast and what we call a braai, you call a barbecue. They would mourn, and the whole town comes to the funeral. So what do you think happens in this case? We're worried about safety and sanitation and the comfort of the people and the safety of the people who meet on a Sunday. They worried about who's going to go to the funeral. So in this case, it was, and it's 15 minutes, we live 15 minutes away from each other, and we cross the cultural boundary, and they spend the entire $5,000 busing the entire church up to the Eastern Cape where the funeral is going to take place, and they use it to buy the cow that they're going to slaughter for the funeral. What does the donor community do? Well, the trust, how could you do that? You've stolen our money. So you can see here the whole approach from a donor perspective, from a well-resourced perspective, really has to be a high-level agenda item. So, for instance, I mentioned earlier, if we're going to go give Bibles into China, or we're going to go do mission with the unreached people in the Middle East or whatever, how are we considering them in our decision-making processes with our good ideas. If you look at the second picture of the camels going across the desert, there's that, you've probably all heard this African proverb that if you want to go fast, you go alone. And then if you want to go far, you're going to go together. So if we look now, we go on to our next slide here, and the relational focus, and I really want to focus on the mutual respect side. So say, for instance, we're coming from a position of donor or resource-driven or solutions-driven. It's going to move faster. Why? Because that's what we do. We move fast, we find solutions, and we go and we fix things. Our ideas are shared amongst our peers, but have we actually included the people who are so-called going to benefit from our good idea in the discussion? Because you might find at this point it takes a different turn. So where you think everybody, for instance, needs toilets in their shack churches in the slums of Africa and the townships of South Africa, but they don't see that as a need, then we're barking up the wrong tree, and we really need to stop and evaluate. Usually, in my experience here, it's compassion-driven. It's very seldom do I see ego-driven, but I'm always looking for that when I'm working with our partners as well. But most often it really comes from a deep level of wanting to help other people. Or it could be a donor idea. Typically would be a project or program. We go in, we fix, we go out. We move to the next one, we fix, we go out. And it's a short-term solution, if it is even a solution, because perhaps those who we're giving don't even see it as a solution. It could. So, for instance, across our continent, there are many organizations who've gone, I hope I'm not going to tread on toes here, but there are mission organizations who've gone in and put water pumps and wells and given 4x4 big trucks into projects in Africa, for instance. And in no time, when the project or program is over, the item breaks and no one knows how to fix it. So they go back, they default back to their own ways. So really, in this relational focus, the mutual respect side, I'm looking for when I'm leading my network is how have we actually considered the very people that we want to help, and it's going to take so much longer. We're in South Africa, I think we're in a more, if you like, fortunate, I don't know how else to say it, position where the rich and the poor are living so close together, we can dialogue. Whereas if you're in the US or Europe or other countries where you don't have such poverty on your doorstep, then it is more difficult because you're relying on long distance mechanisms to have those relationships. So if it was a community idea, so talking about what we would typically label our beneficiary community, it takes time. It's inconvenient often. We really have to listen to them, understand, but not only understand by nodding our heads, but understand and potentially even change our approach or change this solution that we think we've come to add their solution in and somehow come to some sort of a mutual agreement. In a community idea, we'd be more vulnerable with each other. It's open to hear them. It's, for instance, say you've got the solution of the toilets or the Bibles or now it's tablets. Every child in a poor country needs to have a tablet for education. What happens when they don't have the support, the IT support structures? So if we've got this good idea and we're going gung-ho with it, we really need to make ourselves vulnerable to listen to the other, to listen to the people that we want to actually help. And that listening requires a certain amount of vulnerability. In a community idea, if it's really hatched from the bottom up, so if you think of that slide I showed you with the puzzle growing from the bottom up, it's often survival driven. So it's, you know, survival or immediate needs driven, their solution, if they were creating their own solution. And then from a commitment level, it's usually they're thinking lifelong, high commitment at this point. So just ending this little session, it's, are we doing, so when we go into a room and we're coming up with our problem solving, are we doing things for people? Are we doing things with people? As a simple little question you can ask yourself. You can even add it to your meeting agenda to assess how you're doing in building your solution. So just reiterating, it's all about mutual respect. And in this stage, our emphasis is on joint decision making. And here, as an invested partner in the group, your desired outcome doesn't always have all the support. And this is where you'll roll your sleeves up and tuck into a relationship. It's kind of, imagine you're now on a soccer field, football field, and you're rolling those sleeves up, you're getting in, you're having a scramble, and you tuck into this relationship. This is when you're going a little bit deeper. The pressure, the excitement builds up, and we have to be a little bit more careful about considering one another here. And here what we're looking for is who's gifted in what, who's strong in this, and acknowledging where you're weak as well. And look, if this is done, if this phase, this joint decision-making phase is done really well, our outcome of this would be a shared commitment. So again, have we wrestled with all the issues? Or and remember, we're dealing with different characteristics, different agendas, different organizational pressures. And this is really the time where we can use positively to get to know each other at another level, and where that peacekeeping, peacemaking thing plays out. You'll see your competitors, and immediately if you see a competitor, it's maybe that person could be the one to take the lead in that area. And we acknowledge each other's gifts. And here, I think the big thing is use this phase of joint decision-making to come to common understanding. I had an incident in my office today where we have a network strategy. We have 110 network affiliates, which are other organizations or churches. And I was of the assumption this particular person is one of our network leaders and had been part of our strategic vision for the next 3 years. And I was under the impression that, well, the assumption, let me say, that he absolutely knew how to articulate this and how to implement it in the community he's working in. And I mean, even if he's listening in on this, he'd probably smile, because we had a good, robust conversation. We said, at least we both know we don't get offended easily. So we just put it out there that let's just get through this and come to agreement. And after 3 hours, we did come to agreement, but this has been a 6-month-long process. And then you realize not everybody's in the same place, and we're all at different parts of the journey. So how do we move this network forward and come to shared commitment? We did well, and there was a lot of respect in the process. And it's watch the space, because things are happening in his community. So let's move on. We've done the first, the exploration, the hatching of ideas, and we've moved on to this space of joint decision making and the respect phase. So let's move on to another poll, so you don't have to listen to my voice all the time. Right, so thinking about, you're in the formation phase, you're thinking about your key activity being your approach. So that's the lens you're looking through. What's your approach to addressing a problem? You're looking at the relational focus of mutual respect at this point. So as an invested partner in the group, your desired outcome does not have a lot of support. So you're the guy with the idea, you're the guy who's rallied up some donors, and you're gung-ho, and you're excited about this. But the rest of the group aren't feeling your excitement, a little bit like what happened with me today. What would you do as an invested partner? Your desired outcome does not have a lot of support. What would you do if an alternative solution is chosen? So you woke up this morning, great expectation, you go to a collaborative meeting or a network meeting, and the whole thing swings in a different direction. Would you drop your desired outcome for the sake of the group? Okay. Will you try one more time to convince them that your idea is worth considering? Remember how strong you feel about it? Would you leave the group? For the sake of relationship, would you remain committed and open by altering your expectations? Okay, so this is good because we scored highest at for the sake of relationship, I remain committed and open to altering my expectations. And then that is similar to the first one, which is direct, it's naught, is I drop my desired outcome for the sake of the group. And then none of you would leave the group, which is great, which means we all see relationship as important. And I'll try one more time to convince them my idea is worth considering. I probably would too. So for the first one where no one answered, it's actually all of them would be totally viable, but the thing here is to check our motivation. Any of these could be a valid response, and our motivation would come from a place of how important is the relationship. So for the first one, say for instance someone did really feel that, or some of us are feeling that but not putting it in, we would weigh in with ourselves to see, are we offended or are we genuinely prepared to adjust? So always a good question, and I can put these questions onto the slideshow later if you like. The second one, I'll try one more time to convince them ideas worth considering. Then one would ask, what's driving you? Is it because you have a product that you need or want to use in the setting? Or you can see how your idea can actually enhance the outcome and it can really work synergistically. So again, on all four of them, we're checking our motives. Why would we choose this answer? I would leave the group. Sometimes that's valid. It's a valid option. Or it's an emotional response. So glad none of you are leaving the group. And then, of course, for the sake of relationship, I remain committed. And I think this is really the ideal thing we're all wanting to get to as networkers. Good. Thanks for that. So the next stage is we've been through exploration, we've been through formation, and we're now going to go through operation. Here, up until now, we've been working pretty informally now, and it's been relational. We might have taken minutes of meetings or whatever, but at this point, we're starting to tie things together, and it's starting to feel a little bit more formal, and You might find some group members are starting to get uncomfortable at this point, because we're now going to move into agreements, written agreements. And this is really the next stage. It has a certain level of complexity, of investment in the project, and it's much more formal and specific. Now, it's not saying that every partnership is going to reach this stage. Certain partnerships would, and perhaps we can have that discussion later as to when you decide who, it goes to this point or it doesn't. Our key activity in formal agreements is really looking at the roles and responsibilities. So going back to the slide, I'm going to put that one where you're really finding each other, that tackle around, finding each other's strength, coming to shared commitment is kind of the foundation and shapes the roles and responsibilities. So if you're the network coordinator at this point, you are watching in that phase, because in the back of my colleagues always tell me, Dee, you're always wearing Google glasses. It's got that little screen on the side. I'm sure you all know, coming to that end of the US, those Google glasses say you're always looking for something else. It's not always what it is, what we see. And so if I'm in a group, and tomorrow actually we have our team having a team day, and while I'll be sitting in the room with our team, I'm looking out for certain behaviors, I'm looking for strengths, I'm looking for all kinds of diagnostic things in that point, so that when it comes to task allocation or roles and responsibilities, you know exactly who to bring in for what. So use this kind of fun and feisty stage to inform that stage. The next big thing, the other thing about roles and responsibilities is if we document them into our partnership agreements, our written, we call them, I'm not sure if you do as well, memorandum of understanding, where it's a formal agreement. Typically, we would do that if there's finances involved. But when you've spelt it out there, what was helpful when we went into a collaborative partnership that had funding attached to it, is we spelt out everybody's role and responsibility. And thankfully, in this phase, I found a team member who is very strong on policy and ethics. And, you talk about that and her whole face just lights up. And I said to her, Mariette, would you do the MOU for this big partnership we're going to do? Because I can tell you're going to cover all the bases. And so she did. And we consulted with everybody, and they all said, this is what we want to do. So this organization did that organization did logistics, and that one did the training, for instance. And because it was spelled out, this particular collaboration, which was training of early childhood development practitioners, went almost seamlessly. And so it wasn't a clumsy process. We had thought of all the risks ahead of time, and roles and responsibilities were allocated. Secondly, financial management. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been in a situation where you haven't had an agreement in finance management. And from our experience, we've had both. And I'd much rather opt for the documentation one. It's who manages the finances, how does it get allocated, have we done budgets? So even as we're doing the roles and responsibilities, putting real costs, and when that funding coming in is being completely transparent, everybody gets to see it, everybody gets to contribute to it, realistic, we do quotes against everything, and then it's managed. So people are paid according to, really on the whole financial management side, our happy times, if you like, in the network have been when we've done really good budgets and we've considered everything. So there's no surprises, and then obviously a contingency. That almost speaks into, so just that whole budgeting phase of financial management for the project, it's almost imagining the project as if it's done, and then holding each other to account for that. And then we see the management accounts. It's transparent within the group, so we actually share it with each other. At the end, we have a debrief meeting. Is everybody satisfied? Did you get paid for what you were meant to get paid for? Yes, we did. No, we didn't. Let's troubleshoot. Let's sign it off. Let's report to the donor. Everybody's happy. Then formal agreements help us get to our planned outcomes. So if you've got your roles and responsibilities clearly set out, our financial management is transparent, everybody has contributed to it, everybody's happy with it, we're spending the money as we should, nothing's going into anyone's back pocket, we can transparently account to it for it to the donor. And again, here, just speaking into, we've made it a principle regardless of the donor. So if you're a donor who really says, you know what, just spend it on building the kingdom of God, you will still get a report from this project. Just as much as if you were one of those donors who really checks every single line item in the Excel sheet and questions everything. So the way our practice is would be that when the finances, we manage it equally. So you go for the higher standard, and typically the guy who said, just spread the gospel with my money, I don't care how you do it, which is always a nice donor to have, then at least, you know, you're informing him on how his money's been spent. You've been transparent and open. And now you can reach your planned outcomes. So in our situation here, it was actually with World Vision, where they needed a job done. They contracted the network. We looked amongst our network affiliates, because we won't fund directly to a project, but we'll use it as a way to get people to collaborate. We had 4 organizations come together and train another 20 organizations. So that whole journey, the planned outcomes, we can tick, tick, tick. We troubleshoot, you know, we checked against the project as we were going. So here you've got a high level of accountability, and we had nobody offended. I mean, typically here, your risk of offense or risk of people bailing out is quite low, because you've pre-thought of everything and you've signed and agreed. So it spells out clearly who's responsible for what as agreed, how finances are allocated, managed, and reported on. Okay, so again, everything is as agreed. Roles and responsibilities as agreed. Finance management as agreed. Planned outcomes as agreed. Because this is about using our projects to build our network community. Strong accountability. And then here, the relational focus is accountability. I've shared with you the example with World Vision on how that went very smoothly. And as a result, I would say that group who worked together of 4 organizations, you could almost drive any project through that group now, because they've formed such tight bonds and such accountable bonds among each other. They're actually saying, next time we want to bring in 1 or 2 more partners so that they can have this experience as well. And then the emphasis here, which on this phase, the stage really is on protecting relationships. So is it about doing projects, or is it all about relationships? And judging by the polls, I'd say most of us are relational driven, and actually our projects and programs, really we use them in our context for building relationships. Just an example of that is as a network, you know, donors love to come to you and say, you know, I've got money to send a bunch of poor kids on camp. This is literally how people speak to us. Can you do it? And as a network, I'm thinking, of course we can. We've got 240,000 poor children who'd love to go on camp. How many do you want to send? So now what I could do is just contract one of our network members, or I could say, hold on, I'm going to use this as a way to strengthen the network. So we bring 4 network affiliates together, ask them, how would you guys like to work together on delivering a camp for other network members? In the end, I think we had 12 network affiliates all involved in that collaboration. It was a nice, the children benefit. It was always great to see how kids love a camp. But actually, as a network, we're looking at the camp as a method to strengthen the network. We're looking at teaching early childhood development, child protection. How am I using that to build the network? And building the network is all about that whole relationship, getting these relationships right. So just emphasizing again, protecting relationships, that's what the MOU is about. That's what this section's about. It's about the financial agreement, the project management, and then within that is embedded these protected relationships. And I just want to bring in here this verse in Psalm 133, where, and I think there's a song to this as well, you can almost hear it. It's, behold how good and how pleasant it is for the brethren to dwell together in unity. Now, dwell together isn't just about sitting around a table. It's really, that's dwelling together. That's really grappling with each other. If you think about those who have big families, you know, when you're dwelling together with a lot of children in the house or extended family in the house, dwelling together is hard, often hard work, but it comes with a great reward, of course, because it says here, it is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard, that went down to the skirts of his garments, as the dew of Hermon and the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord commanded the blessing, even life forevermore. So our question here is, are we doing projects and programs, or are we building the kingdom through this unified relationship-driven networks that many of us are working in? And then that, in summary, to summarize the whole session here, it's just focus on building trust, have mutual respect, and in all instances, be accountable among each other. And then we can maybe get across this tightrope without falling off too many times, and we remain in relationship throughout the life cycle of partnerships. And then to emphasize again, protect your relationships above all else. And I think, to summarize, the vital need to remain in relationship throughout the partnership. You can't just start a partnership without investing in relationship. Partnerships without relationship is just a contract.